Hey everyone, so we just wanted to pop in and say that originally we were going to call this the Boo Review, but it's already taken, sadly. So, what we have decided to change it to
You
is
decided.
Scare Beware because it was the only one that wasn't taken. So, that's what we're going to be calling
So,
it.
welcome to the Scare Beware, where we review scary movies, I guess. Sometimes not, but most of the time, yes. And we will give you our honest opinion. Um, this one that we are reviewing is The Haunting of Hill House. It's a TV show on Netflix, and we just watched episode one. So,
Yes, so episode 1 is called Steven Sees a Ghost.
and we are joined with our co-host
Our
Daisy.
ghost host, Miss Daisy. She's our cute little puppy.
Okay, so Um, real quick, we just wanted to give everyone a fair warning that there will be spoilers. There is explicit language both in the show and we may get there. Um, and in the show, there are sex scenes. They're not graphic so far that we've seen, but
No.
they're there. So, okay, you
Okay.
want to start?
Yeah. So, first off, we start off with it's Stephen, the oldest child. So, kind of the backstory of the family is that it's the two parents. Liv is the mom, Hugh is the dad, and they are the Crane family. They have 5 children. Shirley,
Shirley's the oldest.
Shirley's the oldest. Stephen,
Nellie.
Theo.
Oh, Theo, that's right. I forgot
Yep,
about Theo,
Theo. She's the middle
the middle
child.
child. Then Nellie and Luke are twins.
Yes, and they're the youngest. And so it's all about their story of living in this house and kind of what they've went through with living in the house. And just so you're aware, they do have like two sets of actors for each character. So they have an older, like adult actor for the children and a child actor for the children in the show. So we'll flip back and forth and we'll say like, oh, old
Or young.
Hugh or, younger. So,
Um, I just want to say it starts out really great. I mean, the scene is already set. You can feel that this is going to be an intense, kind of creepy show. I mean, it already gets. It starts out with just the pitch silent, that you see in most horror movies where it goes dead quiet. You've got the dim lighting, the moon coming in through the windows. It's already set the scene for being kind of creepy.
it's really dark and so Steven's in his bedroom and he hears a child crying. So it's his younger sister Nell. And so he's like, "Okay, I'm the oldest boy. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go see what she's crying about." So he walks across the hallway, goes into her room, and is trying to see why she's crying and upset. And Nellie tells him, "I saw the bent neck lady and she can't, she's here." And he's like, "Yeah, sometimes I get scared too, just trying to calm her down." And
But
then
we don't know who the bent neck lady
we don't
is.
know who the bent neck lady is. It's just this ghost that Nell has seen, and she is the only one who has ever seen that ghost. So no other child has seen that
We do
ghost.
catch a glimpse of her.
We
In the very
do.
first scene, you kind of catch a glimpse of her, and it doesn't show really much. You just kind of see the head's tilted to the side, and she's kind of floating up next to Nellie's bed.
Hmm.
But then later on, you kind of see more of a side silhouette of the bent neck lady.
Yeah, but we'll kind of get to that. So basically, the dad comes in, calms her down, and says, "Oh, it's okay. Go back to sleep." And he leaves the room and goes back and lays in bed with his wife, Liv. And so, an important thing about watching Hill House, Liv, when she's laying in bed with Hugh and trying to, "Oh, are the kids okay? Is everything fine?" She's wearing a cream nightgown. So
I didn't even notice that.
it's very important as we'll go on.
Okay.
But she's wearing a cream nightgown. She seems, okay. Everything's good. They go back to sleep. And then that's when it flashes back to Nell. Oh, and then another important part, I'm sorry, I must have skipped over, is that he tells the kids, we are just staying in this house because we want to flip it and sell it.
Yep,
So
they're
they're
well, and he
remodeling.
says just like the last house. So it sounds like that's kind of like their pattern is they'll buy a house, move into it, fix it up and sell it, and then go to the next one. So kind of a rough life for the kids. You know, they have to go and move every couple. Oh, I guess they wanted to renovate it for the summer, so they're trying to
Yeah.
renovate this house quick. But I mean, it's a mansion, right? It's a haunted house. It's a big mansion. So you've got this. I'm gonna say throw out a number. It might be wrong, but like a 10,000 square foot mansion. Like, how are you gonna renovate that in 3 months?
Right.
So one thing I do want to say about the show though is that it is really good with the transitioning from past to present, from old Hill House to present day. You know, the transitions are amazing. You know, it starts with one thing and then it kind of goes up to you think something else is going to happen, then it transitions to the past and does a flashback, or it goes back to the present. I mean, it's great.
It does. And so
After the first scene, it flashes after you kind of get that glimpse of the bent neck
and
lady.
it's not like, because she's in the background. And you can see as, young Nellie is laying in bed, there's something behind her, but you have no idea what it is, right? It's just like, oh, that could be whatever. And then slowly she comes forward and it's known, okay, that is the bent neck lady. Like you see her face, it's kind of blurred, so you don't see everything, but she, comes up behind her. And so it's a slow scare. It's not like a jump scare. Um, but you get to see her and kind of see what Nellie is seeing.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of after the first scene, it just kind of jumps into like adulthood. Like it's kind of like a little teaser of Hill House and what it was back in the day. Then it jumps forward. You meet Steve is the first one we meet as an adult. We learn that he's a book writer. I mean, he's kind of heartless. I kind of get the sense that he's cold and kind of a dick. He claims that he's never seen a ghost, but he writes horror stories. He writes about Hill House, and we later learn that he wrote the book against his family's will. Like they said, we don't want you to write this book, but he did it anyways for the money. So we learned that later in the episode, but we learn right away that he's a writer and he's trying to catch or chase any story that he can to make a quick buck.
Yeah, he wants to write more books, and so he ends up at this lady's house. Her name is Irene, and she is telling him about her haunted room that she has in her house. And essentially, she says, my husband died in a terrible car accident, and the night after he had died, she was laying in bed. Sorry, Daisy's trying to get up on our table.
She's curious.
She is. And so Irene is telling him, my husband died in this terrible car crash. And so the night after he died, I'm laying in bed. I wake up. Oh, and she said that the car crash was caused by a terrible storm. And so she wakes up. There's water dripping on her face like it's raining. And then there's her dead husband, Carl, at the top of the ceiling. She's looking at him, and it's like he's trying to speak, but it's just a car horn coming out of his mouth. Like that's the noise that's coming out of his mouth. And it scares her so bad. She falls to the floor and starts screaming. And then it's gone. And she's like, I'm never sleeping in that room ever again, which, I mean, who would blame her? I wouldn't sleep in that room either.
Well, so Steve is trying to chase the story, and he's got he's one of those where, are you okay? He tries to have a logical explanation for everything, and he basically tells her he wants to set up some tests, and then he basically just gives her some bullshit explanation as to why she saw the things that she saw, but there wasn't a ghost and stuff like that. So let's not like spoil everything. Let's just do the main stuff.
This is spoilers. Like it's
gonna. I know it's spoilers, but let's just do the main stuff.
It's gonna happen.
We learned that Shirley runs a funeral home and Theo lives at that funeral home, though we don't exactly know why.
Oh, another important part. So while Steven is talking to the is talking to Irene about her husband. Nell calls him. He sees that
Mm.
Nell is calling him, and he ignores her phone call, and he keeps talking to her. And then we jump, over to Shirley, who's managing the funeral home, talking to a family, and she gets a call from Nell as well.
And she ignores the call.
Exactly the same. Ignores her call. Oh, I'll call her back later, whatever.
So then it kind of jumps back to Hill House, and very briefly you see Hugh, the dad. He's with they have helpers on the grounds. They're the Dudleys, and Mr. Dudley's helping him kind of clean out the house, and he hands young Shirley, a key, and says, "I have one for you." So she runs upstairs to what they calls the Red Room, and they try to open it, and they're just kind of speculating what's inside. And I mean, the room's been locked as long as they've been there. The Dudleys say that they've never been inside that room.
They can't find a key for all the master keys, the keys they found. Nothing will open this Red Room.
But when young Nellie and young Shirley walk away from the Red Room, you see moving footsteps underneath the door. So something's inside the Red Room. We don't know what. It's just the Red Room's a mystery right now.
A mystery. We have no idea. Also, since Nellie had experienced the bent neck lady, she ends up sleeping on the couch. She's like, I don't want her to come back into my room. I don't want to see her again. So Liv lays on the floor with Nellie while Nellie's on the couch, and she's like, I'm going to sleep here. And so the mom's like, that's fine. So then as she is drifting off to sleep, you see the bent neck lady is literally just right in front of her face, horizontal, and her hair's like almost dripping into Nell's face, which is very creepy, but you don't see her face in that. You just see her dead body hovering over little Nellie. So then you see why she's so scared, because, that would be creepy.
Yep. We meet grown-up Luke briefly. We learn about him that since Hill House, he's become a heroin addict. He has a history of running out on rehab because Steve tries to call Nell back, and the voicemail that he received from Nell just said that she's worried about Luke. So Steve calls the rehab center and confirms that Luke is still there. So sounds like Luke's got a history of jumping out on rehab. But they mentioned that he keeps on popping in and out of families' lives for a fix. And then briefly later in the episode, we learn that Luke breaks into Steve's apartment. He's walking out with an iPad and a camera, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Theo, I don't think we ever see Theo as a kid in the first episode, do we?
I don't think so. And so when we first see Theo, she's at a bar.
And she is hot. Just saying.
She is wearing, these skimpy clothes. She's there to pick up women.
But so you can tell that she's got those cold eyes. Like, you can tell that she's got some dark stuff that she's not sharing with anybody.
Yeah, and the weird thing about it is that she's dressed all skimpy, but she's wearing these elbow length gloves.
She's wearing gloves, and she claims that it's because she's a germaphobe. But we don't know exactly why she wears gloves yet. But then it cuts to Shirley and Theo talking on the porch of the funeral home, and
so Theo lives in the what would you call
guest
it?
House?
The guest house or pool house of the funeral home. They have an extra, small little house on the property. So that is where Theo lives, and then Shirley lives in the funeral home. It's also a morgue with her family, so her 2 kids and her husband.
But Shirley says, "Did you hear from Nell?" And Theo says, "I haven't talked to her since L.A. So something happened between Nell and Theo that we are not exactly sure of right now.
Thinking it's, a fight that they had, and now they're not talking to each other. So I don't know.
It shows Nell calling Hugh, and it's the middle of the night. He answers the phone.
Oh, before that, we get a good scare.
No.
Yes, we do.
Did we?
Yes. Because, so it's the older, Hugh. He's laying in bed, and then
okay, you're right.
This hand wraps around him, and we're assuming it's his wife, right? And so...
And she's wearing a red robe. in this scene.
In that scene, she's wearing her red robe.
And so Hugh turns and looks at her, and you don't see it. You see a shadow from the nose up, but you see you see the face from the mouth down.
And she also does this weird thing where she like wraps his face and like wraps her fingers like around his eyes. It's really, it's creepy. So then he, turns around and she like screams and it freaks him out.
And then he wakes up, and then he gets a call from Nell. That's right. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. So Nell asks him, "Do you remember the bent neck lady?" And he just says yes, and she says he's back. She's back. I'm sorry. So he asks Nell where she's at. She says she's in L.A., right?
Where Hill House is.
No, she's at Hill House. So she's in her car at Hill House and tells Hugh
she's back at home where she's currently living.
Yes.
Which she's not. She's gone back to Hill House, and so he's like, he can tell that something's really wrong with her and she needs some help. So he's like, okay, just, go to sleep. I'll be there tomorrow. He's got to like hop on a plane and go and visit her and make sure she's okay.
And
the good fatherly thing.
While she's sitting in the car looking at Hill House, you see the lights coming through the windshield on her face, and then it shows Hill House is illuminated, the lights are on inside and out, and she starts walking towards the house. So the question is someone else there, or is it just the house that's doing that? I'm going to say it's the house.
I think we all know it's the house at this point. I mean,
and then it cuts back to when they all lived at Hill House, and Hugh enters Steve's room and he's telling him to be quiet. And he says...
He's very quiet about it. Hurries, gets in the room, shuts the door quietly.
Locks it.
And
says, we're leaving, but you need to promise me not to open your eyes while we leave.
He's like, I will carry you out, but no matter what you hear, you have to keep your eyes closed. You have to promise me. And he's being very quiet about it, but he's serious about it. This is a big thing.
And he's got bandages on his hand.
And his hand's wounded. And it's odd, because while they're in the room... He stops and he tells young Steve, he's like, okay, be quiet. And then someone is like jiggling the door handle.
Yeah, someone tries to get in.
Someone's trying to get in the room, or something is trying to get in the room. And he basically tells them to be quiet. They wait. The jiggling of the door handle stops.
Hear footsteps, walk away. And then Hugh opens the door, checks if it's clear, and then closes it and says, I will carry you. Keep your eyes closed. And then they bolt. They open the door and run, and you can see what kind of looks like Liv chasing after Hugh, and she's limping. She's not running fast. She's limping.
No, she's injured, it seems like.
But Steve opens his eyes and sees whoever's chasing them. Doesn't say anything. They get in the car. The weird thing is Hugh's got the rest of the kids in the car already. He's got Theo, Shirley, Luke, and Nellie.
I'm going to jump back just a little bit. As they're running out the front door, there's the grand staircase. So when you walk into Hill House, there's a grand staircase.
Like every haunted house.
On the side of the staircase, the right-hand side, they've put a hidden ghost into all the episodes of Hill House. And I'm going to talk about them.
Your hidden ghosts.
Yes, and I'm going to point them out. So it's on the right-hand side of the staircase. You can see the hidden ghost as they're running out the front door.
Okay, so... He gets out to the car. Luke runs out of the car. Luke's probably he's young, 6, 7 years old. He's not very old. And he says, I saw Abigail. And we don't know who Abigail is.
Abigail in the window. And he's so confused. He's like, I saw her in the window.
We don't know who Abigail is at this point. But Luke says that he saw her. And then Hugh gets all the kids in the car. And he yells, or all of them are yelling, what about mom? What about mom? What about mom? And then Hugh says, that's not your mom. And then they look up at the window as they're driving away, because it's a station wagon, so they've got the back window. And you see Liv standing up in the window.
With her hands on the window.
Against the glass.
Just watching her family drive away.
The rest of them are driving away, and they're all freaking out
in the back. And so the dad, I'm guessing, has carried all the children out to the car, gotten in, drove off. Away from the mom.
Then it cuts back to Nell, older Nell, and you see her just dancing inside Hill House.
And it's like she's dancing.
It's
It's
like
like
she's
she's
dancing with someone.
with someone, but there's no one there. Like her hands are up, in the position of where she'd be dancing with someone, kind of like waltzing with someone
And
through the
she's
house.
going through the room, and you've got all these figurines and statues or whatever. She goes up past the staircase,
There's like spider webs, so no one's been in there in such a long time. And
and it's dark,
also, it's dark and she's like looking up and her face is all glazed over, her eyes are glazed over, like,
but she's smiling.
but she's smiling, but you're just confused because there's nobody there and you're just dancing through this old creepy haunted
And there's
house.
no music. She's just
Mm-mm.
waltzing with somebody. But then it cuts, so it doesn't show anything after that. She's dancing around, and then she goes past the staircase, and then it shows, what is it? Her dad's clock at 3:02 a.m. changed to 3:03, and then him and all the other siblings, they all wake up gasping for air at the same time, holding their necks like they'd just been strangled or something. And then Shirley wakes up and she goes, "Nellie's in the red room."
Yeah, she's saying Nellie's in the red room, which we have no idea what's in the red room, and it's killing me because I need to know what's in the red room. And okay, so then once this happens, Stephen wakes up. He spent the night in that lady's bedroom who's saying this
Irene.
room, Irene, yes, who's saying this room is haunted. And he wakes up and water's dripping on his face and he's like, what's going on? So then he gets up and he's looking around at the ceiling and is like, oh, gets up close, there's a leak. A pipe has burst and it's dripping
So he's got a
through the
logical
ceiling.
reason for some of the things that, and then he just starts to speculate and gives her all these sorts of logical reasons.
But then after that happens, he hears two cars honking at each other, people yelling, and he looks out the window and it looks like they've like almost hit each other. And he notices, oh, that's a four-way stop and there is no stop sign on this side of the street. So there's the car horn that this lady is hearing and that's why this is happening. So then yeah, he goes and he plays it off, debunks it, and he's like, oh, thanks for letting me stay here, but yeah, the reason you think it's haunted is because you have a busted pipe that you need to get fixed and there's no stop sign for this four-way stop. Of course cars are going to run into each other and honk at each other. That's what you're hearing. And she's like, well, I saw my dead husband on the ceiling. And he's like, oh, maybe you wished, to see him again. And that's why you saw him. And, all these other things of, you were dreaming and you were asleep and you were startled awake with the car horn. That's why so he's totally playing it off, debunking it and saying, oh, this isn't real.
Then it kind of flashes to, Hugh is in an office with his lawyer, and it's talking about, it's like right after they live at the house.
First, it's a flashback to adult Steve and pregnant Shirley.
Oh, right.
Shirley's
She's
yelling
pissed
at
off
him
about Steve writing the book.
She's like, how dare you write this book? I read this book. You make mom sound like she was absolutely crazy when you wrote this book. And you don't even believe in ghosts. So why are you writing this book about ghosts that all of us have talked about seeing ghosts?
And you didn't believe any of it.
didn't believe any of it, but here you are writing a book about all of our experiences that terrified us and traumatized us as kids, and you're going to make money off of it? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to make a lot of money off of it. He's like, I can buy a house, I can move to LA, like, they're giving me so much money for this
And
book.
Steve drives a Mercedes, so you can tell that the book did well.
He makes a lot of money off of this book, and they're all mad about the book because it was their experiences. And honestly, it sounds like he kind of had it easy if he's not believing in ghosts.
Right.
If he's like, oh, yeah, you saw a ghost. And, oh, and he even tells Irene, I've never seen a ghost. Never. I've never seen a ghost. I lived in America's most famous haunted house, and I didn't see one ghost. So they're upset that he's making money.
I think he's in denial.
I agree. I think he's in denial, but yeah, it's kind of rude to, make money off of all your siblings, tragedies that happen to them. And
so then it goes to Hugh in his lawyer's office after he grabs all the kids and runs. And he tells his lawyer it was a suicide. And Steve's with him. No other kid is with him. So Steve just said, my eyes were closed the whole time. I didn't see anything. And Hugh tells him to not speak.
And And the lawyer's saying, this looks really fishy for, okay, here's a dad who was injured, took all 5 of his kids out of the
In the
house
middle of
in
the
the middle
night,
of the night,
leaves
packed
his
them all up,
wife behind, and she's
and
found
she's
dead.
dead. She's found dead. And he's like, it was a suicide. It was a suicide. And they're basically speculating that you murdered your wife and just took your children. And he's like, what about the house? And Hugh says, I want everything locked up. I don't ever want anyone to step foot in Hill House ever again. I want to know that it's empty. I want to know that it cannot hurt anybody else. And the lawyer's like, you sound crazy. You sound like you murdered your wife, basically.
So let's jump back to this. Is if you don't want to hear the ending of the first episode, stop it right now because we're about to get to it. So it shows Steve is coming home, and I guess him and his wife Lee don't live together anymore because he calls her in the car ride on the way back to his apartment, and he says, we can talk about this, and she says there's nothing to talk about and hangs up, right? So he gets back to his apartment, he opens the door. It's like a secured door where you have to have a key to get in, and he's checking his mail, and he looks
and
up.
it's like where all the apartments are internal, so there's like a lobby, that you have to walk in first before you can like go up the stairs to your apartment. It's not just like because some apartments, like, the doors are on the outside of the building, you just go right to your door and walk in. It's not like that. It's the complete opposite.
So Steve walks in, sets his stuff down to check his mailbox, and he looks up because there's a staircase going up to the apartments, and he sees Luke coming down the stairs, and Luke freezes, Steve freezes, and it zooms in on Luke, and he's holding an iPad and a camera. And so Steve asks him, are you cold, which is like a withdrawal symptom of heroin. And Luke says, yeah, he's wearing coats. I mean, they're in LA, so he's wearing like a hoodie and a coat.
Mm-hmm.
And he's shivering. And so Steve says, look, I'll give you all the cash that I have. Keep the camera, sell that, but I need the iPad back.
He's basically just trying to get his iPad back from his brother, who's trying to steal his stuff and go, get drug money. And so he's like, here's $200. Keep the camera, take the $200, but give me back my iPad because I really need that.
Right.
And he keeps saying, this isn't what it looks like,
Yeah, this isn't what it looks like.
He's trying to play it off as, I'm not trying to steal your stuff and get drug money. That's not what this is.
Except when Steve goes up to his apartment, the door is busted in.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke broke into his apartment, and he turns on the lights, and immediately you see Nell standing over there in the back corner of his apartment, which kind of jumps Steve. He's just like, oh shit, like,
there's my sister.
And then he's talking to Nellie,
and
she's got this
at her.
blank stare on her face. She's like got her mouth partially open. She's just staring at him.
She's not
saying a word. And then,
but he's yelling at her. He's like, you sat here and watched Luke rob me, and you just let him walk out of here. You didn't say anything. You just stood there. And he's like, he just keeps yelling. He's like, oh, and you've called all of us. You got us all upset, thinking there was something wrong. Here you are. You're fine, And so while that's happening, he gets a phone call from his dad. So he turns around and he's talking to his dad, and he's like, and the dad says, Nellie lied. She wasn't in her home. She went to Hill House.
And Steve's like, what are you talking about? She's here right now.
She's standing here in my apartment.
And the service that Hugh has is not very clear. It's kind of breaking up. And so Steve's only getting partial information. And you hear Hugh say, Nell went to Hill House. Nell's dead. And then Steve turns around and Nell's right up on his face.
Right up in his face. But she still looks like pink and, like warm, normal. And then quickly,
and then her jaw drops
to turn
open.
gray. Her eyes go like the whitish gray, creepy. Her mouth is opening, and
her teeth start rotting, and
yep.
And then she screams at Steve. Steve falls on his butt, and then she disappears. And then that's the end of the episode.
So one thing that I did want to talk about that we didn't quite go over is, so when Steve is being yelled at by Shirley about the book, him and Lee are living in the same apartment, and he's like, oh, we can use all this money that we're getting to start a family. It'll be so great for Lee and I. That's his wife. And everything. And Shirley's basically like, I don't care. But then, when they're in the car, he's trying to call her, and he is like, oh, can we talk about things? And she's like, oh, there's nothing to talk about. Like, I'm done with you, basically. And he had mentioned to his dad that, oh, we were having, you know, a couple little marital problems, but they're obviously not living in the same place, so they must be separated. And so that's the one thing, is like they're not living together. We don't know why, we don't know what happened. And then also we get to see the Dudleys in the show.
I said that.
And we talked about Mr. Dudley. So he's basically like the handyman around the house. So Mrs. Dudley is the other caretaker of the house, and she basically cleans the house and helps cook. But that's what she's there for, and she is very gospel driven. She's very, you know, religious.
And you can tell that, like, the rest of or at least Liv doesn't really want to put up with it.
No, she's like, I teach all my kids about religion and, you know, everything, so they're not very religious, and so they kind of have a little argument about religion. But that was all that we wanted to talk about this week on the first episode. I hope you enjoyed it.
If you want us to review certain shows or movies, leave us a comment, or feedback, pros, cons, whatever. So leave us a comment. If you like it, and if you want to subscribe, please do.
Yeah, but thanks for hanging out with us for 30 minutes, and we appreciate it.
If you want longer episodes, shorter episodes, let us know. Maybe we can do some teaser episodes, like 5-10 minute clips of something, just like hit the main points or whatever. So let us know. But anyways, say bye-bye.
Bye,
we'll see you guys next time.